here we are going live with Legends Lookback for another round of some excellent comics coverage. Whew, had to rehearse that one 5 or 6 times before we went live. So excited to be talking about some comics. So this week in preparation for our show, not only did I spend an inordinate amount of time reading these Knights of the Old Republic comics. I mean, I feel like I've been living in, 3,994 BBY, right? Anyway, I've messed up the dates a little bit, but not only that, but I've also been binge watching Canteen of Comics, one of our sister shows. Would you call it a sister show, Freddy? One of the other mini shows in our Utini network of content over on the YouTube channel with our buddy Matt, the podcast editor for The Living Force. Man, what excellent work has he been cranking out over there. Fred, are you a fan? I know you've worked with Matt in the past on the production of Living Force. Man, isn't he making amazing content?
He is, man. I'd have to say well, working with Matt before I gave my position over to the boss Wes, right?
There he is. Here with us live in the chat.
Yeah, live in the chat, we've got Boss Wes, double-ot. But yeah, I worked with Matt, and you know, when we were producing Living Force at the very beginning, well, I was producing and he was doing a lot of the editing. We talked all the time, and I was just I like the amount of content that he had, and I was like, man, you got to be in a podcast or something. You've got some good stuff. So, you know, I'm glad to see what he's got, and it's I get, you could say sister podcast. I'm cool with that.
Man, he has been cranking out. He and his partner, wife. I'm not sure about marital status there. We're gonna say wife because I'm traditional like that. Kirsty. They're making
Best
excellent
friend.
content. Start off the episode with making some kind of a Star Wars themed mixed drink, and they roll it on over into some Star Wars current comics coverage. We'll have to see if he's ever read the KOTOR comics. We talked to him about those. But I've got to admit, watching this most recent episode, they made this drink with bourbon. It was like a blueberry lemon bourbon thing. I forget the Star Wars name they had for it. It was something clever and quirky. And Matt, I just knew as soon as he took a sip, I was like, Matt, that's too much bourbon in that drink, man. There's too much bourbon. And as soon as he takes a drink, he goes, I don't like that at all. Kirsty says she'll drink the rest for him, and he's like, yeah, that's a sacrifice. That's a sacrifice we might just have to make. But I do have one big gripe and one big complaint. All right, I've been watching Canteen of Comics. It's such an incredibly excellently produced show, whereas, hey, if you've been following along with Legends Look Back, you know that the fact that we have a show is pretty remarkable. I would say the show that's been closest to cancellation more than any show in Utini history. Anyway, Meg has mostly saved us from the technical difficulties that we were having in the beginning. All that is to say, I was watching a recent episode, and Meg, can you show them, for our audio listeners, what we're showing on the screen is some incredible graphics work, some excellent video editing of Matt using Force Lightning in the middle of the video. Now, here's what I want to know, Freddy. In your opinion, is Matt actually using Force Lightning, or is this some kind of camera magic?
I'd like to say that over the years, we'll say, of Matt working with the Living Force, it does not surprise me that he's gone to the dark side. I'm just kidding.
So in this analogy, Living Force is the dark side. So that makes us the heroic Jedi saviors of the galaxy, or does that make us like the Mandalorians? It's kind of like in the gray area.
In the gray area,
Cav Faves can be the Jedi.
We're like the Mumos.
There we go. Yeah, the Ithorian bounty hunters from the show that we're going to be talking about tonight, or the comics we're going to be talking about tonight. Our second week of coverage on this, getting into the characters on John Jackson Miller's Knights of the Old Republic series. I couldn't be more excited. Whew, I have spent a ton of time reading this week, and I think John Jackson Miller has just really made a seminal Legend series with this. So, without further ado, before we do, have the further ado, I do want to say this much. Hey, Nathan, our video editor, if you can figure out how to make sparkle fingers, whenever we say something awesome, give us that Force Lightning like Matt. It would really raise that production value a little bit. Anyway, so without further ado, let's start the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Legends Lookback, a show brought to you by Utini.com, a show for people who always think of Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo as the next gen video game consoles, where we talk about all things Star Wars Legends, celebrating our rich EU history, as well as diving into lesser-known Star Wars classics. I'm your host, Jared Mays, and today I'm joined once again by the magnificent, the legendary Freddy C. How are you doing, man? What's up, Freddy?
I'm doing fantastic. I'd have to say, after reading 50 comics, I don't even know how to describe it. It's in 2 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Reading 50 comics in 2 weeks is not easy. And, I'm just sitting here in the nice weather, enjoying my, I don't know if you see this Chewbacca outfit and whatnot, just drinking in Star Wars at this point. It almost feels like it's a completely new realm for me.
Chewbacca outfit? What?
Well,
I'm not wearing my glasses or my contacts tonight. Looks more like a Hawaiian shirt.
It's a Hawaiian shirt with Chewbacca all over it.
No way! Chewbacca's on that thing?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see that.
Where does one buy Chewbacca Hawaiian shirts? There's no way I could pull off a Hawaiian shirt.
I can't remember where I bought it. It must have been Amazon. But I saw it and I had to get it.
Freddie, what kind of mood does a person have to be in to type these words into Amazon? Chewbacca Hawaiian shirt. Like... How do you end up making that Google search? Because believe me, I've Googled some weird stuff, especially as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Tonight, I am sporting my new Christmas present Utini shirt, the radio shirt, or the band shirt. I forget the exact name of it. It looks especially good over the interwebs. And by popular demand, I've got to show off another garment of clothing. All right. The Stormtroopers are looking at me a little bit skeptically here as I get ready to bust these suckers out. This was requested in the Utini Discord. If you're with us here live on Twitch, then you can also be a part of our incredible network on Discord. We've got, over 700 people in there? It's always popping. Stuff's always going on in every channel you could possibly imagine and more. And something that was requested was after I got my out-of-print Light of the Jedi, very excited to get this exclusive special copy of the book. It also came with a garment of clothing that honestly I wouldn't have bought if it hadn't been included in the purchase. But now that I've got it, I live in Massachusetts. It's January. It's always cold up here. I've got, and they asked that I share these on the podcast.
Look at those legs.
High Republic socks. I know. Look at that calf flex. My High Republic socks. There you go, Cheryl.
Oh, that's
we are
awesome.
all the Republic, even my feet. There you go. How about you, Freddie? You got any new things to show off on the episode? You got your shirt. What else? Anything fun?
Actually, I might as well show it on the show. I already made a video of it on Instagram, so if you follow me on there, you've seen it already. But Meg was my secret Santa. And
oh, yeah, that's right.
She surprised me with a die-cast. It's funny because on the show I called it an X-Wing Falcon, although I'd love to see
what is that?
X-Wing
You even a Star Wars fan, Freddie?
Hey, man, I'd love to see that vehicle. Hey, Wes, do it. Anyway, so I'll grab that right now on the shelf, but it's definitely on my shelf, which I don't put much up there. This is like my prized possessions. So
Freddie's got 2 Star Wars collections. He's got one back at his parents' house in Arizona. He's got another one in California. Which we don't know about is he's got like a vault in the mountain on Wayland as well. So 3 if you're keeping count.
Wayland.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. If you could go over to Freddy's Instagram and check that out if you want to see the opening video. Over here, I'm pretty excited about having my exclusive copy of Light of the Jedi. I've got the Light of the Jedi, the regular version. I've got my my comics covers. I think I showed them off last week. Pretty excited about those. And unfortunately, accidentally ordered 2 separate orders of both Light of the Jedi and Test of Courage, which is now, #1 New York Times bestseller. Only the 6th Star Wars book to top the adult fiction list. And then, of course, Test of Courage was #2 on the children's book list. So very, very exciting time to be a Star Wars books fan. Huge congratulations to Justina Ireland, Charles Sewell, and the entire High Republic team. And as excited as we are about those, we're going to be talking about something. There we go, Freddie. You got the X-Wing. Beautiful. You haven't opened it. You haven't taken it out of the box, Freddie. Are you an in-box or out-of-box collector?
I don't know if you can see the shelf here, but everything's
Are they all
in
the packages? Well, you just wait till if and when you have kids.
Oh, gosh, yep.
No, Heather said, tuning in last week, she really got a kick out of the fact that I said, no, those are daddy stickers in The Great Jedi Rescue. So, and there's still, a sticker update. They're still in the book.
Joxy, I'd like to see a shirt that says, nope, these are daddy
stickers. These are daddy stickers? That would actually be pretty good. Get little stickers of like Corey and Eric and Wes's faces. These are daddy stickers. Anyway, before this gets any weirder, I do want to say we're not going to be talking about the new cutting edge New York Times best-selling books tonight. Instead, we're going to be taking a blast from the past back to when I was in high school, man. These books were being published back from 2006 to 2012. I started high school in 2006, got married in 2012. We get married young in Christian Arkansas culture. So I know that might sound a little odd to some of you. It's my high school sweetheart. So all that is to say that it's a blast from the past, some good nostalgia. I actually didn't read these back in the day. We are talking, of course, about John Jackson Miller's Knights of the Old Republic series. Now, a little bit of correction from last week. We're still catching up on all this stuff, all right? It was pretty well consumed by the High Republic stuff. A little bit of correction with Light of the Jedi and Test of Courage and Into the Dark and the High Republic, all this stuff taking over my bandwidth. Got a little bit of information wrong. I know, hey, I don't like to get information wrong. I like to get it right all the time. You can tune in to, what's that other show, the one that Trevor does? Star Wars Archives with Joxy and Trevor, where I've been challenging Trevor to some Legends trivia. If you want to get on that competition over on our Patreon, that's a lot of fun. But I did get something wrong on our podcast. That is, Knights of the Old Republic, I said ran for 52 issues. Okay, so it's actually 50 issues plus one if you count issue 0, which isn't a full issue, but all right, we're going to count it. So that makes it 51. Then there's a 5-issue miniseries, Knights of the Old Republic War, which was published, 2 or 3 years after the series had concluded, and is a solo adventure with Zane kind of caught between the Jedi and the Mandalorian in a big epic battle, and there's all kinds of flipping sides and heists and crazy stuff taking place, but it's not exactly a direct sequel, and yet it is. So we're going to say, all in all, 56 issues, or 50 or 51, depending on how you're keeping count. Either way, no matter how you slice it, not 52. Does that about cover it, Freddy?
Yeah.
You following my math?
I think I got your math. Either 51 if you're counting just KOTOR, but if you're counting KOTOR War, like the sequel.
KOTOR War, that really rolls off the tongue.
It does, right? 56. So it's really up to you how you feel like counting it.
And something we didn't say last week about John Jackson Miller, the esteemed author we're talking about here, we didn't really cover the other Legends books that he's written, but they were in the show notes. So anyway, we did the research. Might as well shout it out. He's also written, do you think you can name them all without looking at the notes, Freddie, off the top of your head?
All of the
And the
artists?
comics, books and comics. What has John Jackson Miller written in Legends? What all has John Jackson Miller written in Legends? Off the top of your head without looking at the notes.
Okay, so Kenobi.
Yep.
Definitely KOTOR the comics, which is he's got so many huge achievements.
That's his longest running series. Yeah.
Yeah, his longest running series, and then of course Kenobi, which is in my opinion one of the best Legends books that I've read.
Oh yeah, see if I can 10. Find my hardcover and show it off a little bit here, like Vanna White.
I have my hardcover somewhere. Okay, so
I can't get it out from behind my desk. Oh well.
I'm trying to think of what else he's got. A New Dawn. That's right, A New Dawn.
Not Legends, doesn't count.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, okay, hold on. We reviewed this one, Lost Tribes of the Sith.
We have not reviewed that one. We've talked about it briefly.
Yeah,
we gave it like 30 seconds one time.
That's good enough. We'll talk about it again.
Hey, that's one of my favorite Legends books.
Yeah, it's really cool. It came out of nowhere, in my opinion. I was not expecting it, and I think it was free, right?
Yeah, they were, except for the final short story. There was one that was only published in the paperback collection.
I think that was prologue. I'm not sure.
I remember taking that with me to read while waiting in line to see The Force Awakens. Isn't that amazing?
That's awesome.
It could not be more different than The Force Awakens.
It's so different.
Okay, so there's still one more Legends book that he has written that you have not named, and it actually corresponds to some comics.
Which one is that?
It was exactly it was actually what he wrote immediately following Knights of the Old Republic. Still an Old Republic era story. Have we stumped Freddy?
Yeah, I think you might have stumped me.
It's Knight Errant.
Got
beat
it.
you by like 2 or 3 seconds. All right,
Yeah.
Knight Errant, starring Kara Holt. Meg, you remember us talking about that on the Ladies of Legends episode? A little bit about Kara Holt.
A little bit.
A little bit. That episode was a blur, wasn't it?
Sure was.
When Meg's show notes disappeared, and I didn't have the sense to pause the episode long enough for us to find them.
Yeah, that was. Look how far we've come.
I went to bed that night, and then I just remember like almost falling asleep, and then opening my eyes and thinking, "Here's all I had to say. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back." And I didn't say that, and instead we just made you look like an idiot. And I'm so sorry, Meg. Everybody F's in the chat for Meg on that episode a couple of months ago. No F's in the chat. Meg doesn't like the F's in the chat. Oh well. Oh my goodness, that was a lot of fun. And as far as I know, that covers it. He's written a couple of other one-off comic issues here and there, a couple of issues of the Empire comic back in the Dark Horse days, so forth and so on. But those are his major accomplishments. Anyway, incredible author, absolutely one of my favorites. And I especially appreciate his contributions to the fan community because he provides behind-the-scenes material on everything that he writes, whether it's Star Wars or not. And I have spent a crazy amount of time inside John Jackson Miller's brain this week reading. I'm trying to be a good podcast host. All right, guys, give me some credit. I'm reading the behind the scenes on every single issue of Knights of the Old Republic. And I got to say, he really gets into some crazy deep dives in terms of referencing different characters from across the series. And I mean, even for me, I'm quite nerdy about like the Easter eggs. He really commits, doesn't he, Freddy?
He really does. I couldn't even. I tried to look at all of the Easter eggs after I read the comics, and I had to go back and I had to catch them all. I was trying to catch them this time, and I still didn't get them.
I mean, I'm reading some of the behind the scenes on like KOTOR War, and he's like, you might remember that this Republic officer was actually in one panel from KOTOR issue 17. And I'm like, no, John, I did not know that. I did not catch that detail. Nobody caught that detail but you, John. But way to go. I applaud you for being you're right alongside us in our nerddom. Anyway, so an incredible Legends contributor. And as Freddie mentioned, he did kick off the canon era with A New Dawn. Has written most recently a short story for From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back. If you're looking to get some of these issues, you can, of course, check out a variety of ways to collect them. Marvel Unlimited, Comixology Unlimited would probably be your most accessible. You could get them tonight or whenever you're listening or watching this episode. You can pick them up there digitally. You can, of course, click on our Utini affiliate link over on utini.com. You can pick up one of the 3 Marvel Epic collections or the new Omnibuy, which we talked a little bit about last week. And we've got news on this, Freddie. On Twitter, John Jackson Miller revealed the fact that he is going to be signing copies of these hardcover Omnibuy of Knights of the Old Republic, and he, has qualified it by saying, depending on when you get your order in, we I can't guarantee that I can sign every copy. Mm-hmm. However, if you place the order through, check out his most recent Twitter post. You can also check out what he's got available on his website, farawaypress.com, I believe. And there he, of course, includes details on how to pre-order a signed copy of one of these hardcover Omnibuy. Now, I'm caught in a dilemma, Freddie. You ever get caught in these Legends collectible dilemmas? I'm caught in the dilemma where I already pre-ordered it. So do I cancel my pre-order? He said not to. He said, don't cancel your pre-orders. Is that him just trying to make money, or is that him trying to take care of us as fans? I'm stuck in this dilemma, Freddie. Where I don't know if I should order one that's signed. I already have his autograph in A New Dawn, so now do I need his autograph in another book? But this is going to be a hardcover omnibus. It's going to be so collectible. What do you think I should do, Freddie?
Well, I mean, if the man said, I'm going to sign him, don't cancel your pre-order. I've got to trust the man. I gotta put his word to it. And if he doesn't, I'm going to send it to his house for him to sign.
Mike Stackpole actually has a program through his website where he will sign any book that you send him, as long as you include an envelope or some kind of packaging that's already prepaid for him to ship it back to you. And he says it'll take him a while. I've thought about shipping all 5 of my X-Wing Mike Stackpole books and my hardcover of I, Jedi, Corey Helton's favorite book. Thought about shipping those to him for him to sign. But anyway, how about you, Meg? Do you think you're going to get one of these signed editions? I know you're trying to freeze your Star Wars spending this year.
I probably not. No. I have so many books, and I don't know where to put them all.
What books? You don't even have any books, Meg.
You're right. I have none.
No books.
0. They don't exist.
Meg's books have books. I mean, I can just see, even on top of the rows full of books, there's even more books piled back there.
It's becoming a problem.
Well, you know what's not going to make that problem any better? Buying one of these 1,000+ page omnibuy to put on the shelves. You know it's not going to fit on the shelf either. It's not going to fit nicely on one of these shelves at all.
I hate that.
Over 1,000 pages? I'm worried about the binding on these things. All right. Well, we've talked a lot about the collectability aspect on all this. Meg does, however, have queued up for us images of the 2 different covers. We talked about them last week. I didn't have the correct illustrator information. I want to make sure I get this right this time. The covers are by Brian Ching and Dustin Weaver. This is the Weaver cover. Is that right, Freddie? The first one we're showing here.
That's the Brian Ching cover, I believe.
Oh, have I messed this up again?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. All right. With the one that has... Meg, quit flipping them around. Go back to the one that... Why is my camera spiraling? I'll restart it, Meg. So we've got the Ching cover and the Weaver cover. The Ching cover was actually the... You're saying that's the one with all of the characters on it?
The one with all the characters, that's the Weaver cover.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. As long as we are on the same page with that. Good deal. So we've got the cover with all the characters and the cover just with Zane looking dark and broody like it's 2008. And this is one that I've ordered, the Ching cover. Freddie, you said you like the Weaver cover. How about you, Meg? Which one do you prefer?
I think I like this one.
The Weaver cover.
Yeah.
So you're telling me both of you are against me? It's treason.
Sure.
I really like I like Brian Ching's art in general, especially in the comic itself. Brian Ching's probably got some of the best art in the comics. So I would love to have one of his, but just the Weaver cover shows all the key characters, and just seeing them right there on the front gives you a lot of nostalgia right off the bat.
I imagine it's going to look even better in person than it would look just on the internet, Anyway, so excited to have these. If you don't have your copy pre-ordered, hey, if you're watching this live, you get the inside scoop in terms of getting a copy pre-ordered that could possibly even make the deadline to be signed by John Jackson Miller, the legend himself. We've talked about the collectability of all of this tonight. Now we're going to move on into talking about the characters. Now, remember, as is the case with anytime we do a roundtable episode on a Legends title, these are not new books, all right? The newest Legends book was published. Well, there's that Legends comic that was like the follow-up to the Marvel series, but we're not counting that. The newest Legends full fiction adult novel was written 7 years ago at this point. So, spoiler warning. We're going to be in spoiler-heavy territory, and when I say spoiler-heavy, I mean like the big, massive plot twists, not just like surface-level stuff we did last week. We're getting into some of the big twists that you didn't see coming in a million years in tonight's episode. So this is your warning. If you have not read these books, I would highly recommend that you read them before listening to the rest of the episode. So consider yourselves warned. Now, much like we covered last week, we talk about Knights of the Old Republic basically being this. However, the plot does go beyond this eventually. After about 40 issues, kind of moves beyond the initial setup. The initial setup is this. Zane Carrick is about to be knighted as a Padawan. He and his classmates are about to become Jedi Knights. Zane, however, a little bit skeptical about whether or not he will actually make it. Zane, always the utter failure, arrives a little bit late, only to discover that his Jedi Masters had actually murdered their students. Lightsabers drawn. It's gory and surprising, even though it's like pitched and advertised this way. It's on the cover, like, oh, the Padawans are going to die. But then at the end, it's still kind of a big reveal. Anyway, teaming up with his former nemesis, Marin Hierogriff, or Griff for short, a small-time Snivian snaggletooth, kind of a crook, under-level kind of guy, lives in the seedy underbelly of Terrace. Zane and Griff team up to be on the run from his former master, Lucian Dre, and the Jedi Covenant. They end up, of course, going on this massive investigation and trying to find out the truth behind this tragic turn of events. From there, trouble ensues. There's heists, investigations, one out of the frying pan into the fire situation after another. There's many wacky, I can't believe this is happening moments. You've got classic Star Wars adventure. There's heroic Jedi. There's evil Jedi. There's evil scientists. There's brutal saber-wielding red-eyed Sith. There's honorable Mandalorians, less than honorable Mandalorians, and lightsaber battles and explosions galore. And all that's just scratching the surface. Don't you think, Freddy?
Absolutely. The ride that this comic series will take you on is everything from fantasy to sci-fi and everything in between, and romance. You'll touch every subject, terror, all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Really gets into, there's a whole series with the Rat Ghoul that's kind of a play on like classic monster movies, wouldn't you say, Freddy?
Yeah, what I like about this is the amount of aliens they incorporate into the main story. Not just, like the Cantina Band and stuff like that. It's great to see.
Yeah, you got your snaggle teeth and your hammerheads. Didn't we establish last week that those are like basically the equivalent of racial slurs in the Star Wars universe? Derogatory. I guess that's a better way of saying it. Absolutely. And John Jackson Miller in his behind the scenes stuff actually goes on to say that he spent some time rifling through like the essential guide to alien species and used them all, and eventually ran out and had to create some more, which is amazing. Only he would do that. It used every single alien species in the essential guide. Absolutely incredible. So let's start off with our hero once again, as we did last week. A little bit different perspective on him now that we've actually finished the series this time around. Let me ask you this, Freddie. Now that we've read the whole thing, what do you think, in your opinion, is Zane's best quality? And why is he a good protagonist for this series? Because I got to admit, I was a little bit, until this week, struggling to characterize Zane. I even had to go to, over to the Wook, in fact, to look up some information on Zane in order to just be able to put his character into words, have a much better grasp on the character now at this point. I finished the whole thing. So in your opinion, Freddie, why is he such a good Padawan?
There's a couple things that I really like about him, and I think his best quality is that he's genuine. I think he is one of the only characters that you see this entire time, besides, the people in his group. But he's like the most genuine character you can come across.
Sure. He's pure-hearted.
He's pure-hearted. He doesn't have any maliciousness in his heart. He does want to change things for the better, and it doesn't matter what side you're on, whether you're Mandalorian, whether you're, I'm pretty sure he'd make friends with the Yuuzhan Vong in some way.
Like Anakin Solo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pure-hearted in that way. Definitely a heart of gold. Amazing that he is a pacifist. And it's something, even in the very last series, the KOTOR War, he blows up a Mandalorian ship that they think is going to be their escape ship, but he waits to do it until everybody is far enough away from the ship. Like, hey, some of them might be knocked down. They might get bloody noses, but like at worst, a bloody nose, right? He is a pacifist, which is interesting that he never directly kills anyone. Freddie, what do you think it's important to get to know a pacifist Jedi, especially in a series that really is in the middle of a war? If you play the KOTOR games, this is set throughout the Mandalorian Wars, especially the opening stages of the Mandalorian Wars. There's still like another 4 or 5 years between this and the KOTOR game. But in this, it really is, there's tons of space battles and planetary scuffles. You've got the Mandalorians and the Jedi, and Zane is caught right in the middle of this. So Freddie, why is it so important that we get to know a pacifist Jedi? Because we do see a lot of Jedi in the military side of things in, let's say, like the Clone Wars, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is the interesting thing that this is what I really like about him. He's a Jedi, but he doesn't fall in line with the Jedi, if that makes sense, right? He's kind of carving his own path, and I don't want to get political, but what I'm trying to say is it's very much like
Do it, Freddy. Get political. I dare you.
Oh, no.
Just because I'm a liberal, just because I am a conservative, just because I believe in God doesn't make me a Democrat, a Republican, or a Catholic, right?
Sure.
And that's very much the path that he follows is I believe in all of the things that they believe in, but I'm not going to be a part of them. And I know that we've probably got something later on to talk about it, but having a pacifist, to me, he feels like an actual Jedi. He feels like a real Jedi.
He seems
And
like more of a Jedi than the Jedi in this series.
exactly. He seems like a Jedi more so than the Jedi around him, if that makes sense too. Yeah. So seeing him, he doesn't have to prove a point with violence, right? He can figure out a way to kind of hit you in a spot that's going to hurt, that might make you think twice, right? Like hitting you in the pocketbook. That's going to make you think twice.
Yeah, he's not afraid to take your money. He is, however, not going to take your life, which I appreciate that about him and Griff. One of the amazing things throughout this is that Griff calls him henchman. Griff is like the small-time crook who, spoiler alert, for the end of the series, he ends up running a restaurant.
The Bivoli.
It's just so kooky. And he's got a Trandoshan sidekick, which we talked about this for a while last week, the way that John Jackson Miller is able to utilize the classic alien species that you peg as one stereotype. Like a Trandoshan is always a bounty hunter. Well, in this Trandoshan is clearly like a nerdy loser who ends up being the cook in the restaurant.
Yeah.
just so amazing. I love shout out to Slisk. Slisk, the best Trandoshan there ever was.
Yeah.
And Boss can take that to his grave. All right. I will say this, the most amazing thing in all this was when Zane was presented with this decision where finally his name was cleared by, did you notice this, Freddy? The actual Jedi masters from like the Temple on Dantooine in the KOTOR game. It's got Vrook. What's the name of the Yoda-like species? There's Vrook, and then there's his buddy, the little Yoda guy.
Little tiny Yoda that changes shape throughout the comic.
And color. Sometimes he's blue, sometimes he's green.
Yeah, that's a good question. I forget his name. I'll
find it.
Yeah.
Vandar, right?
Vandar, maybe.
Yeah.
You got me on that one.
I already said Vandar. Who's the other one? I'll find it. Keep talking, Freddy.
But so
in this, Freddy Zane, ultimately his name is cleared for not killing the Padawans. They figure it out. They learn that it was Lucian Dre in the Jedi Covenant. They expose the Covenant, defeat the Covenant. Dre isn't killed. He's banished to exile or whatever. And then ultimately, Zane chooses not to return to the Jedi, even when they offer it to him. So why do you think, Freddy, it's important that he doesn't return to become a Jedi, instead paves his own path, does his own thing, even when he has the opportunity to return to the fold?
He, in my opinion, from what we've seen with the Jedi, right, the structure, what they believe in, and it's all the different sects within, he just doesn't seem to fit in with the Jedi. He's not rigid. He doesn't need to be in the Jedi Order to do the things that he wants to do, which are good in my opinion. I don't think anything he's doing is really bad. They're scamming the scammers, the slavers, right? And he's down with it. He's not a, I don't know if I should say this term. He's not a gray Jedi by any means.
There we go. Gray Jedi. Where's Andrew?
Yeah. But he's just being himself, and it's just like you may be a really good shot, but you're not going to join the military. Doesn't mean you fit that mold.
Sure. It really is amazing to think about the comparison to Ahsoka. Stories would have been coming out. Obviously, Clone Wars started in 2008. The issue in which Zane refuses the return to become a Jedi would have been 2009? Could have been between 2008 and 2010. So the story for Ahsoka choosing not to return to the Jedi after being rejected by them happened later than this. This came first. Ultimately, there's an incredible parallel, isn't there, to Ahsoka's choice not to return to the fold because the Jedi had let her down, right?
Yeah. They have very similar fallouts with the Jedi, except, in my opinion, even though you can draw that parallel, they're totally different in terms of their character. Zane is not ready to kill anybody. Yeah, Zane's
a failure, and and Ahsoka's a general.
Yeah, exactly. And she's very capable. She's a great warrior. She's killed probably a lot of people, unlike Zane. But
A lot of
I don't.
droids for sure.
A lot of droids for sure. A lot of aliens possibly. Who knows? The bad people. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's tough. But there's a question in the chat. Which canon Jedi would you compare him to? And I don't really know if there's anybody like him.
I got one.
Okay, go.
I'm thinking. I've seen a lot of comparisons in my mind throughout this. I've really gone frequently to Ezra from Rebels. Really seeing a lot of comparisons to Ezra in the sense that Ezra's a little bit bumbling. He's headstrong, but he makes a lot of mistakes along the way. He also is a part of this crew. It's a very similar crew to the crew of Rebels. You've got this big load lifter droid. You've got his like saber wielding, force sensitive ish sidekick in Jerial, kind of being an analog to Kanan. You've got kind of your Zeb character ish in Griff. So you've got the very similar. What's the name of their ship? The Last Resort. Doesn't he have great ship names here? So I would say for me, I made a lot of comparisons to Ezra to answer that question. Yeah. At times he's Kanan, at times he's Ezra, at times he's even more of a failure than that. It's hard to characterize. We need some real make Jedis goofy again. You know what I'm saying? Let's get a hashtag trending there. Definitely kind of bumbling it, but eventually he learns how to game that. Like he realizes that his luck is going to break one way or the other. Sometimes things will play terrifically in his favor, and it's like a force power that he has. We talked about it last week. Other times he knows that things are going to break absolutely against him, so he tries to make preparation to compensate for this weird force power that he has, which works out really well. I eventually was like, finally he caught on. He learned how to gamify it. We talked about Zane being a henchman to his Snivian buddy Griff. Now, we asked this last week, Freddie. If you had more time to think about it, how do you place Griff among the best in Star Wars sidekicks? And then you got the best Star Wars scoundrels. Let's start with the Star Wars sidekick. We think about Chewbacca, for instance. For instance, you've got Han and Chewie, right? We talked a minute ago about like Kanan and Ezra, and maybe we could say Chopper is like the third there. What's another good sidekick that we can think of? Lando and Lobot.
Best trio or best duo ever. Of course, you've got R2D2, C3PO. Everyone has to have their opposite, right? As a partner. In one case, you've got Chewbacca, who really does care. Yeah, you've got the odd couple. Chewbacca, who really does care, and then Han Solo, who's just out there making it on his own. But he's always going to care about Chewbacca, and that's probably about it. But in this case, it's so weird because it's hard to say that Griff is a sidekick because he's very much like the mastermind in a lot of sense of all these schemes. And he teaches Zane to kind of break out of that mold, I don't even know how to describe it. He just
stop playing by the Jedi's rules and start thinking about how to scam people to make a profit.
Yeah, he's a trickster, that's for sure. He's learned a few tricks, but Griff is actually pretty high up there. I really like him. I posted something in our Slack channel.
That was amazing.
Our Utini Slack channel, and I feel that's very much like a thing for them, right? They're very funny. They're a comedic duo. Yeah, but they're always looking out for each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, eventually Slisk kind of steps in as Griff's new sidekick because Zane clearly has risen to his potential finally as a Jedi and, doesn't become a Jedi, but goes off to kind of do his own thing, starts this like coalition that's freeing slaves, which if you ever wonder if you're on the right path, if you end up on a path that has you freeing the slaves, then yeah, you're on the right path. Okay. So eventually, kind of moves beyond Griff. Griff is running like this secret organization of information sharing. So he's still able to assist Zane in this, in his quest and in his journeys, even from his restaurant, right, from afar. Mm-hmm. So definitely love them as a couple. Great duo there. The failed Jedi and the failed thief on Terrace. So fun to have a Snivian in the spotlight as well. Now, we talked about these two main characters, talked about them last week as well. Let's talk about a couple of heroes that didn't make the cut in last week's episode. Let's talk about Jerial. Jerial, of course, we start to, we're introduced to her as this kind of hardcore It's got like the double-sided staff that she's twirling around, kind of like Darth Maul. She's what's her species called? I had it earlier. The same species as the Jedi Master from the
Arcanians.
Yeah, Arcanian from the Tales of the Jedi comics. We end up getting really deep into the series before we learn her backstory. Freddie, weren't you surprised by how deep we went into the series before we actually learned what her whole deal was?
Part of me felt like they were just going to finish the story and, see if they could make up another timeline to keep the story going and keep the interest going. I'm not sure how it worked out. I didn't follow the series while it was going live, but it seemed like, hey, what can we talk about now? What are we missing? And they happened to fill up a good amount, in my opinion. After that, I want to say,
same.
Yeah, after 30, what is it, 32 or so?
Once Dre is defeated, I was like, what are they going to do? They just defeated the main villain. We still have like another 20 issues left. Yeah, and it actually even gets better from there, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really does. It actually, in my opinion, what happens after the main series is you have a couple of discoveries. Now you can get to the things that you were ignoring because you had to tell that story.
Yeah.
Right. So it goes through her background and it comes later on, but it's very pleasing to actually see who she is, because we've been trying to figure this out and we had no idea until now.
And we get these glimpses throughout the series that she's force sensitive. There's a couple of little coincidences that seem like, hey, she just used the force to push that villain away at the last second to save Zane's life or something like that. We've got a couple of like older men in the series who are competing for her attention. In particular, Roland Dyer, the Mandalorian, who, massive spoiler alert, we learn toward the end of the series that for like 30 issues has not actually been the Mandalorian on their team. Roland Dyer, who they had come to trust during the Flashpoint story arc, but we learned was actually the sociopath Mandalorian scientist Demagal. That was a huge twist. We'll talk about that more in a minute. We got Demagal competing for her attention and affection, but then also Malik competing for her attention and affection, which, that's right, we're talking about Malik from the Coach War games. He actually has a prominent role throughout this series as kind of like an older brother figure to Zane, ally / frenemy, who is constantly coming to blows with Roland Dyer / Demagal, the Mandalorian on the crew. Always just at the hair of the breaking point, just ready to go off on this guy. You can tell that he's got a lot of pent-up anger, pent-up aggression, which is going to eventually land him as a Sith Lord bobblehead one of these days. Well, he's behind me. You can't see him. So we get this massive reveal, but these men are competing for Jeriel's attention, affection. They want her on their team. It gets a little bit, problematic in my opinion, the way that they're so focused on her as a love interest. But then ultimately we learned that she was, she had been a slaver. She had been, kind of recruited as a teenager into, forced into conscription as a slaver against her will. They talk about her brutality. Then her sister comes into play, and we learned it was actually her sister who was the brutal one, but she was still complicit for a while, even though she had been recruited into it. Yeah, it's confusing. John Jackson Miller, he really weaves some convoluted, some dense stories. There's a lot of twists and turns and retcons, but then ultimately she joins Zane in freeing the very same people that she had enslaved in the first place. Now, one of the things we talked about in recent episodes, Freddie, is the problem, in my opinion, that Star Wars has with living atonement. There's not a lot of living atonement. There's a lot of this Christological archetype of dying in a blaze of glory in order to save people, which can be overdone. Let's leave that for Jesus, okay? Hashtag leave it for Jesus in 2021. How about this, Freddie? What does her story say to you about guilt and living to make up for what you've done?
Yeah, so she originally, right at the very beginning when we meet her, she's trying to escape and she's just trying to hide. She's trying to hide from her past. And it's interesting that we just kind of keep going on the story without even really knowing where she came from. But in my opinion, I want to say your past doesn't define who you are, and it won't define what you're capable of. As long as you acknowledge that, if you're doing something bad, that you should probably not do it anymore. So what I really like about her story is that she doesn't let the fact that she was a slaver you know, I don't know if she was a slaver by choice. I think it was forced conscription. Yeah.
But then eventually she's complicit to a certain degree.
Of course. Yeah. And I think it's, you know, one of those things like once you do it and you just get numb to it, and you become good at it. Right. If that's the only thing that you can do. And what I like about her is that she redeems herself by not dwelling on it and just moving forward. And you know, she wants to escape and she wants to be by herself and she still wants to run away. But she runs along with this guy, Zane, because he just sees the good in everything. And I think that's why all the people are around him, is because they see that he sees the good in everything. And they enjoy that someone like that is genuine and exists.
Yeah, he's not like hunky. He's not heroic in the typical sense of the word, but he is pure-hearted. Which she can be the brawler. She can be the hardcore one in the family. It doesn't always have to be the dude. Which I appreciate the way that subverts this late 2000s stereotype. Now that's excellently said, Freddie. I came to a point where I was like, is Jeriel really just like a 2000s love interest where she's like the slender lady who can kick butt when the going gets tough, and everybody, Malik and Roland Dyer and even Zane, they all just want to like be with her in a sexual sense. Is that really who she is? And then eventually John Jackson Miller fleshes out her story in a meaningful way, which was much needed in my opinion in order to take this series up a notch for sure. Don't you think? Did you get worried that it was just going to be a love interest thing, Freddie?
Yeah, I felt like there was a lot of testosterone on the pages, and we definitely needed something to take
when Malik's
away.
around. It's all testosterone all the time.
Well, when Malik's around, he's very much like "you belong to me," sort of, but without saying it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And he gets a little cringy, especially towards the end. And I'm really glad that Zane does what he does. He grows along with her, but she very much is capable, right? And that's what I love about Star Wars is a lot of the females are very capable, and she's one of them.
Yeah, she absolutely is. She absolutely is. We talked about these different men that compete for her attention. One of them is Roland Dyer, who we actually learned was not Roland Dyer the whole time. Now we're introduced to this character. He makes a huge splash entrance in the Flashpoint story arc early on in the series. He's known as the Questioner. He's broken away from the Mandalorians. He's not fighting their war. He's trying to investigate why the Mandalorians are going to war against the Republic in the first place, which is something that's eventually revealed in the games and even in the Revan novel that we reviewed with Patrick a few months ago. Ultimately, they were manipulated by the Sith, and there's a lot of retcons. There's retcons upon retcons. But Roland really is an interesting Mandalorian for somebody who isn't just obsessed with domination and warfare, right? And what, in your opinion, Freddie, how does Roland break the mold from what we expect from Mandalorians in this series?
Well, when we see Mandalorian in this series, it's all very much, the war, conquering, conquest, strength, and when he comes along, it's more of like, he's questioning everything. Why are we doing this? Why do I have to do that? He tries to escape. He doesn't want to fit that mold. And I think that's what he does really good at is he gets the name, the Questioner, right? That's what they call him, because he's not someone that believes in everything. He's got to make sure he does his due diligence before he actually believes in something, or he just knows that that's not him. That's not what he wants to do.
Now, let me ask you this, Freddie. There came a point where I was reading through, the second half of the story, and there were some times where Roland was really possessive and protective of Jeriel, and I was like, why is he doing this? I really liked this character, and he's taken a weird turn.
Yeah.
And then eventually realized, he's a supervillain. Yeah, he's like the evil scientist who has actually taken Roland's armor. Turns out, if you want to impersonate a Mandalorian, they've all got their own unique armor. All you got to do is knock them out, take their armor, put it on, and nobody will ever be the wiser. When did you pick up on it, Freddie, that Demogorgon was in fact Roland?
John Jackson Miller pulled the wool over my eyes.
Pull the rug out from under me. Wool over your eyes, rug out from under me. We're both laying on the floor, with
completely confused. I'll never forget. I knew when Demogorgon came in, or when Roland came in, and I just remember switching between when I found out who he was and going back to Roland and just going, what? Like, what? How did I miss this? How did I miss that he was?
Yeah.
Oh man, it confused the heck out of me. And when you look at and when you kind of go back and you look at the timeline,
Yeah.
you see it almost instantly without even really having to I guess spend much time on it. But if you have no idea, it's gonna get you. It
And
got me.
John actually does an amazing job. He actually writes like a whole page worth of explanation in the issue where they finally revealed it. It's available in the third Legends Epic Collection, which is how I've read these. He actually goes into detail on what that long con was like because, Griff and Zane, they are doing cons on people all throughout the series. Little do we know that we as the reader are getting conned the whole time in a couple of different ways. And there were points where, like I said, I was scratching my head and I was like, what's up with this character? He's gotten a little bit creepy. He got really creepy, apparently. He was
Very
a super
creepy.
villain. And there were points along the way where what you eventually realize is this is a big difference. It's something that's happened in Star Wars storytelling recently. John Jackson Miller had this plotted out from the beginning. As soon as he introduced Roland Dyer and Dimagall, he figured out that he could make this switcheroo. And he played us for years, for 2 or 3 years in the ongoing publication of the series. He was playing the reader, and some astute readers were able to figure it out pretty early on. But for the most of us, we didn't see it. We didn't quite understand what was happening. But there's a big difference there, don't you think, between what he did in planning this out, scripting it out, and intentionally concealing the truth versus, let's say, what we got in the sequel trilogy, where it was one creator just retconning the work from the previous film, trying to make it all fit, as opposed to having one cohesive story plotted out from the beginning. Do you see what I mean, Freddie?
Yeah, he definitely had a long game, and I see it in the chat too. What an awesome long game it really was. And well, I'll never forget. When I first found out, it was after I hadn't read these in a long time, and I didn't even finish them. I got maybe through for the first 10, and it's not that I lost interest. I just had a lot of other things to do. But getting back into it,
Same.
I didn't know until like I said, I didn't know until he told us. But when you go back and you look at that character, he's a little cringy and he's a little standoffish, and there's a couple of things that Roland does that just seem kind of odd, a little off, and you can't pinpoint it. There's nothing to like. You have no idea. John Jackson Miller doesn't explain it. The characters don't really explain it, and so you're just left wondering what the heck is going on. And you forget about it as you keep reading because there's a lot of big events. But then the moment it happens, oh my gosh, and
he does throw a lot at you. So you eventually, even if you start to scratch your head, you're eventually just trying to catch up with what's happening next.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, she's able to disguise it and conceal that pretty well. I found it one of the most satisfying plot twists in all of Legends, at least for me recently. A lot of times I can see things coming, and I did catch on a little bit with what was happening, but did not understand that character had been switched with this mad scientist. Dimagall's whole deal is that, eventually we learn he came to be basically obsessed with trying to replicate. And I love the callback to the Tales of the Jedi series, didn't you, Freddie?
Yeah,
this goes back to like the origins of 90s Star Wars comics, and we're trying to basically clone Master Arca, right? Yeah. And it kind of goes along with this Legends plot point, which is it's hard to clone Jedi. It's hard to clone the Force sensitive, and the experiments don't exactly go as planned, but Dimagall, he's pretty committed to this. He wants to basically raise an army of Force-sensitive Mandalorians, and eventually ends up with one test subject who makes the cut, which he thinks is Jeriel. It turns out is Jeriel's sister, throws the sister away like garbage. Oh, man, it's some pretty Shakespearean stuff of epic proportions. But Dimagall, he eventually becomes like just this mad scientist who's willing to experiment on any species to bring about his grand plan of genetically engineering the Mandalorians. And John Jackson Miller then isn't afraid to kind of steer into some bioethics questions, don't you think? With Dimagall kind of being this mad scientist.
He reminds me of a Nazi scientist, because how many Jedi has he killed trying to do his experiments, and experiments at no cost, whether at all costs, I should say, at all costs. The cost of life doesn't matter. It's an experiment, and it's all for science, right? And that's kind of where you see like the evil scientist. That's, in my opinion, why it was a little weird seeing him get really involved with the medical. He was at, I forget which planet or which ship that was, when he was, they were just like, leave him be. He's doing some research. He's doing his thing with the medicine. So I see, I've seen all these things happen on the.
No, move along.
Yeah. But anyway, I think it's just it's pretty interesting. And the next one I really want to talk about in terms of villains, because it's, in my opinion, the one that prolonged the longest, right? It wasn't.
Yeah, he's the defining villain of this series. Yeah, go for it. This is Lucian Dre. He's basically, Zane's master, who turns on him and is trying to frame him for the murder of his, of the other students. Lucian, ultimately, we learn his backstory is revealed in issue number 9, which was amazing for the fact that that's actually the first issue, that maybe the only issue that doesn't have Zane in it at all. It is just an entire issue that is a side story on how Lucian Dre became the villain that he is. Comes from this wealthy family of aristocracy, and his family. His father was this heroic Jedi who fought against Exar Kun and was killed in the battle against Exar Kun. Has this convoluted story and how he rises to power as a Jedi, and why he wants to stop the return of the Sith. And it's all ultimately tied to his family lineage, his attachments, and then even his own love for his girlfriend, partner, wife. I'm not exactly sure how all that works out in the series, but it really does reveal the problem with attachment among the Jedi, don't you think, Freddy?
Yeah, you see jealousy. And his jealousy leads to his anger, and of course, he is out of control, in my opinion. His attachments, don't look at her, don't touch her, don't think about her. That's how I feel about him. He's very much the leave her alone. I never want you to be by my mom kind of guy, right? And those attachments really drive him crazy. And the more he wants to be like his dad, the more he wants to be successful. It's crazy, but the more he starts to fail.
Yeah, there's a quote that I saved. We'll see if I can find it from this last story arc that I was reading earlier today, where Zane is basically recapping where he's been and what this whole journey has been like for him, and he's trying to convince this Republic. Almost said Republican. Not talking about politics tonight. He's trying to convince this Republic officer that not basically, Last Jedi, not to fight against what he hates, but to save what he loves, right? So he says that they were training me, his masters, until my crazy teachers saw the future and decided it'd be better if I weren't in it. I lived, but my classmates didn't. And that's when I learned killing people doesn't save the future. It destroys it. Can you think of a more excellent summation of this entire series?
Honestly, it's funny because the whole time reading this, I feel like it's very much the pre-Jedi, right? We're seeing a lot of who they used to be, but before they really thought what we see now, right? Everything that you see, no attachments, they basically, no comforts in society. This is before all of that, and honestly, the demise of Lucian and how, just reading his whole story, you start to feel bad for him, and you see why he's become who he is, right? Which is success at all costs, which is the difference. Him and Demagal have this similarity where it's like at all costs they're going to try to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, Demagal does, and there's another villain that we're going to get into. Is kind of revealed later in the series, and that's Hazen. He's the servant of the Dre family. He's kind of lurking in the shadows, and then there's this epic scene. We'll see if I can find the artwork for next week, where Hazen, throws the hood back over his head, kind of like an Obi-Wan Kenobi hello there, except for way more villainous. And he's got like this glowing red eye, and he's got double red lightsabers, and his red cloak is billowing behind him, and there's like a fire to the Dre estate, and he's over here, with both of these looking. I was like, oh, apparently that creep was a villain the whole time. And this is one of the things that Skooma Joe said last week. One of the things that he loves the most about this series is the fact that it just has excellent villains, incredibly great backstories for its villains. Do want to say thanks, Wes, for those bits. I want to give you a shout out to the 28 bits. If you didn't get bits, Freddie, did you even Twitch stream? Doesn't the Twitch stream just instantly delete as soon as it's over if you didn't get any bits? That's the way it works. Not a big deal
until you get bits. I
appreciate all of our live viewers hanging in here with us. My other computer just died, so can no longer see the chat. So we've just a couple more villains to talk about, and we've got to talk about them. So you can say whatever you want about me, and I would never know. We've got a couple more villains worth talking about. One of them is Hazen. You know, we talked about the great reveal with Demogorgon and Roland Dyer. Well, how about this other reveal, Freddie? Did you anticipate the villainous reveal with Hazen?
I mean, the second I saw Hazen, I was like, this guy's all bad.
Yeah, I mean, he's evil. You're like, oh, he's the one pulling the strings.
How could you let him do that?
You couldn't have anticipated just how complex his backstory was, could you?
No, first of all, I didn't know he was such a failure. Just looking at him, I would have thought completely the opposite. This guy is super strong, super powerful, and he is, in my opinion, the opposite of Zane. Completely the opposite. They have the same origin, but they go the totally different paths.
Okay. See, I was thinking of the similarity where you've got this failed Jedi and this failed Sith. Hazen had basically been a failed Jedi like Zane, but then ends up in the middle of the conscripts himself to Exar Kun, right? After his Jedi that he was who is it? Zane's father, isn't it? Barrison? No, it's Lucian's father, Barrison Dre. After he's killed by Exar Kun, he joins with Exar Kun and the Sith. So you've got like this failed Jedi and this failed Sith, both kind of as foils for each other. So how do you find them as opposites, Freddie?
Well, opposites in the fact that they have the same origin, right? They start on the same path as wanting to be a Jedi, wanting to be having your master be proud of you, but not quite getting it, right? And the funny part to me is, he gets, in my opinion, Hazen gets duped by Exar Kun, right? Just by thinking like, oh, I'm just going to use this weak Jedi and, basically prey on what he wants to be, right? Which is successful, and he at any cost. That's what he's doing. Sure. So I just find it super interesting that that they go about the same path. But I want to say, you talked about Zane's dad. We didn't even talk about him. He's just a boring banker.
He's a banker. Hey, he saves the day, man. He saves the day. Really he absolutely does.
I just love the way that they go about it. My dad's got a boring job. He's like the top banker.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. Yeah, it is funny the way that this series does play to the family relations throughout as we go. We've talked about Demogorgon, we've talked about Lucian Dre, we've talked about Hazen. One final villain that at least deserves 2 or 3 minutes here is none other than the bobblehead Malak himself. Say hello, Malak. Okay, so now one of the funny things I've seen throughout the quarantine, Freddie, throughout the COVID pandemic. Have you seen this, Freddie? The memes that have shown. What's the name of the villain from the SWTOR games from Malgus, Darth Malgus.
Malgus.
He's got the breath mask that comes up over his nose, whereas Malak, in case you can't see with my Funko Pop, little noses on the Funkos. The mask is down below his nose, so it says "Be like Malgus, not Malak." Right?
That's so good.
Got to cover your nose, folks. Cover your nose.
That's pretty good.
In this series, Malak doesn't have his mouth or his nose covered because he's for half the series he's known as Alec. Then we learn his real name. What a misdirection there, Freddie. If you're trying to hide in plain sight, and you're Malak, conceal your name to be Alec. Did you realize that he was Malak from the first page?
When I first saw him, I had a feeling when I saw his name and I saw the way he kind of looked, kind of bald. He still had hair, but it was falling off, I think. There was something that just popped out, and then I immediately looked it up. I went to go research it, and it was definitely Malak. And I was like,
the stripes on top of the head.
Yeah, so cool.
In the KOTOR games, which let's be honest, I've played them 10 or 12 times. All right. There's no Star Wars, very little Star Wars, except for Dark Empire for reasons. The reasons. There's very few things in Star Wars that I love more than KOTOR, as do most people my age who spent countless hours playing it on the Xbox back in the early 2000s. However, in that series, the relationship between Revan and Malak, they're initially bros, right? They're Jedi who have this like anti-establishment. We are gonna go fight those Mandos. They can't conquer our galaxy, no matter what those old crusty Jedi masters. Which, by the way, I'd looked it up. The names are Vrook and Vandar. Which, like, hey, you want to confuse a podcast host? Just give two Jedi masters names that start with the same obscure letter. All right. They go anti-establishment. They're bros who then become. There's a subordinate relationship where Revan is the master and Malak is the apprentice. But then basically Malak turns on Revan, allowing Revan to be captured by Bastila or Bastilla if you're a psychopath like Freddy. So they go from being bros to there's this problematic subordination of Revan being master and apprentice to then one betraying the other to ultimately Revan turning, depending on which path in the game you take, Revan betraying Malak and conquering him in order to, redeem himself. Whew, that's a lot. However, in the games, don't you think, Freddy, that Malak is mostly just a mustache twirling, bad guy? There's not a lot of depth to his character. How does this series give Malak a much needed backstory?
It shows. I mean, he went through a lot of struggle. He was Demagol's research pet, right? I mean,
he was tortured.
He was tortured, and he went through a lot. And he went for Jeriel too. He formed an attachment to her, I would say, at the very beginning, and it kind of got creepy. He came in like the bravado, "You're coming with me, baby,"
Yeah,
and
treating her as an object rather than a partner.
Exactly, and you just see he's starting to slip, right? He starts to slip.
Which he does the same thing to Bastila.
Yeah. He starts to slip a little bit, and you notice that something's going on, right? It's interesting to see that there was a lot of different types of Jedi. There were rich Jedi. There were filthy poor Jedi. Shouldn't say filthy poor, but they looked like the
politically correct Freddy in 2021.
Well, they were all like scrubby, like Zane was not that.
Yeah,
he was like,
I got it. The Dreys are definitely like aristocracy.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got Jedi with wives, right? And secretly teaching their partner how to be a Jedi outside of Jedi sanctioned training. And it's just all over the place. It's the Wild West. And you see how problematic it is. It forms, in my opinion, and Jared, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it reminds me of like the, 1800s Vatican, 1600s maybe,
sure.
Renaissance. Yeah. Power was everything, and power was the Catholic Church at that time.
The late medieval period.
Yeah.
Yeah, the church history class that I'm teaching right now, we only got to the 1000 AD, so I'm a little bit behind. We'll catch up in like a couple months, and then I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It became about protection of power, and ultimately you see Malak snap in this series, where it's when Jeriel rejects him that you realize, okay, yeah, he's gonna go straight villain.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because in the series you get some of these different KOTOR callbacks in Karth. Karth makes a great appearance, as does Malak, and they both kind of serve these older brother roles to Zane. They come alongside him, and they are not exactly on the same side, but they definitely like mentor him, help him out. Cassius Fett, even Boba Fett's grandpappy, that makes kind of comes alongside him, not on the same side, but they're allies for a time. And so there's nothing I love more in this series than the way that this series deepens the characters that you get to know, at least on a surface level, in KOTOR, such as with Karth and especially with Malak, to be sure. I'll give a shout out in my honorable mentions here as we close out the episode to Karth. Love the appearance of Karth in this series. Also love the Mumo brothers.
They're so good.
Talked about last week, the Ithorian bumbling bounty hunters. They even make a They even have a comic cover. I'll have to find out which issue next week they have the cover of. It is amazing. It's just like two Ithorian bounty hunters. And John Jackson Miller on Twitter actually just first revealed some art. He did his own depiction of Griff and the Mumo brothers, which is amazing because he's like not an artist, but he was able to draw these Ithorians, draw these hammerheads with their two mouths on both sides of their face. I did, however, recently subject my wife to sitting through like 5 minutes of the Ithorians speaking in KOTOR. I was talking to her about how ridiculous it is to sit through and listen to the Ithorians speak in KOTOR, where they're talking about both sides of their face. And she was like trying to look away. I was like, no, you have to watch this. You have to watch it. Which I imagine is what it's like to listen to the Mumo brothers argue about like what planet should they hit next. And then the other one speaks up. And it's just absolutely comical. It really plays well in the comics, especially for the fact that you don't have to listen to their freaking voices. Whew, enough about that. How about you, Freddy? Honorable mention. Any other characters we haven't talked about?
I definitely like the robot. I forget his name. What is it?
LD?
LD.
LB.
LB. Yeah. I like how he's very basic. He's
a
almost
load
like
lifter.
He's like a toddler in his intelligence. You know, he's like ship stay. You know, but he's got a lot of character, even
super
though he's
heroic in his strength.
Yeah,
he's like the Hulk in terms of what he can do physically.
Exactly.
But, yeah, not the smartest droid, because we get a lot of smart droids like Smart Alex. LB is not that. He's he will answer what you ask him, but not a great conversationalist, to be sure. Excellent. Yeah, I hadn't really mentioned LB. And one of the fun things about the series is the way the crew comes together, right? Mm-hmm. You've got Zane and Griff and Jeriel, and then Roland, and then eventually there's a villain on the ship, and they don't even know it for months. And the Mumo brothers are a part of the crew for a while. LB, it's really fun the way, and Malik is part of the crew for a while too. Amazing the way that the crew kind of ebbs and flows, and people go and come, and they take their solo adventures, and tons of other great like Legends callbacks. KOTOR Easter egg. Saul Kareth, who was the captain of the ship that Karth was apprenticing under. He's got a great role in this series as well. Definitely love the way that this expanded his character. Whew, there's a lot for us to talk about. So we're going to keep this conversation going into next week. Next week, we're going to do the overarching questions. Let's talk about our favorites all across the board. Favorite cover art, favorite panel of art. We're going to talk about how this enriches the KOTOR games. Talk about favorite Easter egg, favorite story arc, the way that this ties into our recent interest in the Mandalorians, and how this ties into our understanding of Mandalorian culture, Mandalorian war. All kinds of fun stuff for us to talk about next week. After that, we're going to be talking about the Jedi Academy trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson, with none other than the star, or one of the stars, there's a few of them, of the YouTubes himself, Nathan, with his ever broadening mane of long hair that's been growing out over the quarantine. It's been fun to watch that develop over YouTube. He's going to join us in the flesh, virtually, to talk about the Jedi Academy trilogy, which he just recently read himself. Big Legends fan over there with Nathan. So we're going to join forces to defeat Exar Kun once and for all, or at least fly the Sun Crusher into another celestial body. Well, that does it for this week. Thanks for joining us for Legends Look Back. Thanks to Meg, our producer, and thanks to Nathan, we just talked about, our video editor. Thanks especially to our incredible patrons. Thanks to our buddies who have been with us live in the chat tonight. You, of course, can also get in on the behind-the-scenes action with Utini, with all kinds of bonus shows. You got Meg's show, Calf Faves. You got Bounty Hunt, Lightspeed Skipping, Star Wars Archives, I'm going to be on soon, and so much more. Now we're live on Twitch. You can help us out, of course, by watching Living Force every Monday, game nights, which happens on Wednesdays and or Fridays, and then, of course, with us on Legends Look Back, you can subscribe the old-fashioned way, or even by taking some credits out of Bezos' pocket and slipping them into Corey's fanny pack with Prime Gaming. Also, remember, we want your questions. You can email us, either text or an audio file, to legendslookback@utini.com. You can send us a message in the Legends Look Back Discord channel, or leave a comment on this episode on YouTube. Or amazingly, excitingly, you can follow along with our brand new Twitter account, Legends Look Back. What is it? I messed it up. At Legends Look Back. Or you can talk to us personally on Twitter. I'm at Jared Q. Mays. Freddie.
At Wake Up Freddy.
And Meg.
At Meg Dowell.
And of course, if you're looking to buy some of these books and want to help support the show, you can look up a book on Utini, click the Amazon link in the profile, and we will get a few cents to help keep the lights on. Another way to help us out and show your love of Utini is by grabbing some swag from our merch store over at utini.com/merch, such as this ever so beautiful radio tee, or what do we call it? I messed it up again, didn't I? The band, the band art. I don't know. Utini band. I used to be in a band, Freddy. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
I told you this. Yeah, I played the bass in Rocket Launcher Puppy Destruction. I kid you not.
I was in Fierce Wasabi.
Okay, we've definitely talked about this before. Anyway, you can wear this shirt or any other shirt or even tank top, which we've got those as well, from utini.com/merch. If you have read any of these books, such as Knights of the Old Republic, issue 0, issue 1, issue 2, issue 3. All right, you know the gist. It goes all the way up to 50 plus KOTOR War 1 through 5. You can leave a review over on utini.com. We'd love to know what you think. Do you love the Mumo brothers half as much as I do? Because I'm thinking about getting a cardboard cutout of them. You think my wife would like that, Freddie?
You have to have an audio clip on them. Play it every time you walk in the room.
Definitely. Yeah, like one of those motion sensor Christmas ornaments. Woo, that does it for this week. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And remember to keep the Utini fan code and be a force for positivity in the fandom. May the force be with you.